I am thrilled today to be joined by Draffin. She is a woman's somatic coach, a psychedelic microdosing guide, a breath and meditation teacher, and menstrual cycle educator. Yes, she is just one person, but has all those hats to wear. She helps, in particular, midlife women embrace their bodies, sex, and psychedelics, so they can overcome the wound of unworthiness, get free from mental health challenges, and build a life they're excited about. Leslie believes somatic practices like breathwork, along with sacred earth medicine, have the power to bring us home to ourselves, awaken our authenticity, and heal the trauma locked within our subconscious. What a wonderful thing to do. Thank you so much for joining today. You're super welcome. I said before, I've been really looking forward to this one, and I'm sure I'm not going to be disappointed. So I guess I have to ask you, the first question really is, what was your life like during your formative years, your sort of teenage years? Can you draw a path from who you were then to who you are now? Have things changed a lot?
So when I was growing up, my dad's a preacher. So I was raised in a really religious family in a pretty conservative part of the United States. And so I was at church multiple times a week. Layer onto that the fact that I was also adopted. And so that would come into play later with some trauma that I think was related to being in foster care for a month after I was born. But really, I had a really stable childhood. I felt loved. I felt special. I think for the most part, I felt really secure. However, I also had this underlying anxiety that I could never quite put my finger on why. If I had this consciously safe house, why was I worried about something happening to my dad or something happening all of a sudden and like the rug being pulled out from under us and us being suddenly destitute? And I remember having those fears from like the time I was 5. And so as a teenager, I was just really, I think, grappling with the constraints and like the dogma of the church around what it was to be a woman. And also struggling with, 9/11 happened when I was in 10th grade. I felt really unsafe after that. And for me, that really led into an eating disorder. It led into deep perfectionism, not self-harm in like a way that I was, physically cutting or anything like that, but deprivation, and seeing how long I could go with starving myself. And so this was also, I'm the salutatorian of my high school. I'm like a straight A student, captain of the cheerleading squad and all of the things. But deeply inside, I felt so unworthy and unlovable. Now, when I get to college, I have my first sexual experience, and 4 weeks later, I get herpes. And so all of the things that I was taught my whole life, around staying pure and never having sex before marriage, and if you did something bad would happen, kind of came to fruition, and it felt like almost divine punishment. And that threw me into a shame spiral that then led to alcohol abuse, addiction to achieving. And so really my entire first 30 years was this spiral of feeling unworthy, feeling unlovable, doing as much as I could to try to prove to people that I was worthy, and really just being deeply disconnected from the body in a lot of different ways.
Wow. It's hard, isn't it? I guess a lot of the things you talked about there, so the eating disorder, the straight A student, captain of cheerleading team, I guess they're all things you can control to a certain degree, especially the eating disorder thing. Yeah. Where, like you say, you can see how long you can go without, or see how much, how little you can eat, and then it's, wow, what have I achieved? Isn't that wonderful?
Yep.
I guess whereas other parts of your life, things like 9/11, bigger things, just felt out of control, really. Mm-hmm. So the person you left us with then, at college, overachieving, disappointing in many ways, first sexual experience, struggling to understand who you were then. So you're a very, very different person from that today. So what was I don't know, was there an epiphany? Was there a particular moment? What happened to put you on the path to the amazing work you've done since then?
Yeah. I think the first thing that happened was in 2018 and early 2019, I really had a spiritual awakening. Okay. Around the divine feminine and around the goddess specifically. And that was so different from the religion that I'd grown up in that was God-centered, male God-centered. And so I really started, I've always been like a voracious reader. I love learning. And so I really started to dive deeply into religions that centered the goddess, and practices like meditation and breath work that could help with my anxiety, because at this point I was still really struggling with feeling anxious and feeling overwhelmed and feeling depressed at times. And I'm also at this point a very successful news anchor. I'd been in TV in 2019 for over 10 years. And so I had a super supportive work environment, thankfully. You know, I had been in toxic work environments before. But what was so nice is I had the opportunity every week to do this series called Your Best Life. And so I used work to get to talk to these fabulous people all over the country and all over the world about things that I was really interested in. And so in 2019, as I start my meditation practice and as I really start to work with the goddess, I begin to hear what I now know as my intuition, but I'd never understood what that really meant. I heard this little quiet voice inside me say, you've got to get off of hormonal birth control if you really want to know what it's like to be a woman. And so I'd been on the pill since 18. I was deeply afraid of ever falling pregnant because of the fact that I had this, you know, I was born from, you know, actually child molestation. And when I came off of the pill in 2020, in the midst of the pandemic, while I'm also the essential anchor, the one who's at work, everybody else who was like anchoring from their room, the stress level was so massive. You know, I didn't get my bleed back until about 9 months. I had got cystic acne, my hair started falling out, terrible mood swings, and I lost my libido completely. And so that, I think, became the big switch to figure out what is going on with me internally, what's going on with the body, and then how is that also impacting my mental health. And so that's really the turning point into deep diving into fringe modalities, I guess you'd say, more taboo modalities, sacred sex, tantra, psychedelics eventually, breathwork, meditation, somatics, and putting those pieces together to try and figure out why I was the way that I am.
I think I've asked two questions so far, and you've given literally a, a day's worth of answers, which is wonderful. But yeah, so from exploring those different things, so particular sacred sex and tantra, and starting to understand somatics, etc. And I've talked to some amazing people that about sacred sex and about tantra in particular, and I know there's no reason why I can't go and explore those things, but I've left those calls feeling not jealous, but sort of, wow,
Mm-hmm.
this really is possible. This isn't, this isn't like you see it in the films or the book or novels and things. This is something that's really, really incredibly, incredibly accessible and intuitive, and I think for both of them, it comes back to a point you talked about before about goddesses and the sort of thinking of the mother as god, etc. All of them are about that, about sort of opening, the sort of going into the opening and giving passion and sharing and all. It just, yeah, it's fabulous. So from being a successful TV anchor, the anchor, it's quite a stretch then to think, right, no, I think my mind and body, my intuition is telling me to follow this. I'm going to use the words uncertain path because you didn't necessarily know what was going to happen. How did that come about then?
Mm-hmm. So when I was in my last year of TV, I
Mm-hmm.
had a coworker who was a lot younger than me, but she always kind of joked. She's like, "You should be a life coach. Like you're basically the therapist of the newsroom. You're the mom of the newsroom. You should do this." And so because I'd done so much work with my own menstrual cycle to get it back, the teacher that I had started a certification program. And so I went and got certified in menstrual cycle education, menstrual cycle coaching. And so I did that for the last few months of my TV career. But for me, what really happened was a breakdown. 2022, I say, is my Kali year. Everything had to burn down so that I could rise from the ashes. But I, for the first 6 months, really was struggling unknowingly with PTSD related to TV and burnout, as well as, this generalized anxiety. And so we had a couple of things happen locally that year that were huge news stories that just completely broke my heart. The last straw for me was this school shooting that we had about 2 hours from here at an elementary school, and
Yeah.
19 little babies were murdered. And I was alone sitting at the desk anchoring the news at 10 p.m., having to read like what they wanted to be when they grew up and their favorite color. And I just cried on the news right there. And I finally make it to commercial, and my producer's like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I am absolutely not fucking okay. Like, this is what are we doing? Like, this doesn't make any sense to me." And so the next week I took a leave of absence for my mental health, and then I never went back. And so in those 3 months where I had like the disability paycheck, while also not having to go to work, it was tough. I mean, I was big time grappling with who am I? Who am I if I'm not this person I've wanted to be since I was 10 years old? Because that's the truth. I had wanted to be a news anchor since I was about in 5th grade. And thank the goddess, I had already started to separate myself and understand that what I did every day was a costume. What I did every day was an act. And that wasn't who I really was. And so your question, how did I go onto this uncertain path? Honestly, I felt at some points that I was maybe not forced is the greatest way, but my mental health did really force me to leave a job that had been the dream, but was then a nightmare. And from there, because of all of the inner searching and inner seeking I've been doing, I found ways to start to share that with the world, share that with the women that I was working with, and eventually through additional trainings and additional focuses, find this beautiful like triad of modalities that help me move through the uncertainty of who I was, the uncertainty of this disconnection to my body, and finally find some ways to help myself and then help others too.
And has it ever felt like you were on the wrong path, or
Oh
was
yeah.
it just? Oh, it has. Okay. I thought you were going to say no. Always been. Yep.
No,
Always been head down.
when I was so what I realized is my like soul's path, I think, is to help people understand the world around them. And I was doing that in TV in my own
Yeah.
way. And now it's more about the internal world. So I think that has always felt like this is the correct path. However, because I work in the realm of psychedelics and they're not legalized in a lot of places, that has for me as like a good girl, very much triggered so many fears. And there are times when I'm like, what in the hell am I doing? Like, this is so stupid. This is just not helpful. And then I'll have like a group coaching session with my membership and see just like an aha for someone. I'm like, okay, chill out, Leslie. Everything's going to be fine. But no, there's definitely been, even in the last year, big questions around like, what am I doing? Is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this it? And I think for me, that really, it strokes a wound that I had around doing enough.
Yeah.
And so that's what I remind myself. It's like, you don't have to do anything to be worthy of love. You just simply are. And you feel you need to do more and achieve more and be successful because of this very deep unconscious, subconscious, brought into the conscious now wound around this worthiness. And so, yeah, it's been tough.
I always find it interesting that certainly most men know very little about menstrual cycle and going further forward, sort of perimenopause, menopause, all those things. And I always think that if it was men that had those things, shit, the whole world would know about it.
Oh, for sure. 100%.
We'd take a week off. We'd take a week off work once a month. We'd be having, so we were getting special menopause leave for a year. We'd have absolutely, but yeah, but most men don't know how many tampons somebody goes through, how long a cycle is, what it really means. Yeah, and when he talks about hormonal birth control, I don't think a lot of people would have thought of it that way. They would have thought of it, it's just taking a pill, isn't it?
Right.
Just stopping having a baby. Then you sort of say, actually, well, think about it. It took 9 months for my body to start bleeding again. That means there's something pretty intense in those little tablets that I take once a day to stop us having kids. Yeah, so it fascinates me that. But also, I don't think, sadly, that many women are fully informed about the menstrual cycle, perimenopause, menopause. I mean, We're sort of getting there a little bit in the UK about menopause and things, but perimenopause really hardly talked about. Periods, menstrual cycle, you just get it, sort of get on with it.
Yeah.
Yes, you're going to feel terrible for a week, a month, but that's just what it is. And my daughter, I was saying before, she just finished off all of her exams. And she was saying there's quite a lot of, and I was invigilating for some of the exams at a different school. And quite a few of the girls there had to have sort of, hot water bottles, and they had to respirators and everything. I think, God, it's just such a difficult thing to be going through, but they don't seem to get any recognition of that during exams or difficult times. Well, you just get on with it. But half of the room, the boys, don't have to go through that. Don't have to have a hot water bottle or cramps or, have to take medication just to get them through the exam. So I do feel that's, very difficult. So thank you for getting into that place. And then, so you did the menstrual work first. Then when did you come into the somatic side of things? And could you just explain, for the sake of people that might not know, what somatic means and how that differs from what a traditional therapist might look at?
Great question. So to answer the first part, I was working with people around their cycle for about a year. And yet each of the women that I worked with, within a few weeks of working together, we would uncover things like sexual trauma. Sometimes they remembered it. Sometimes they had not remembered it. We would uncover things around feeling really ashamed of being a woman. I worked with like teenagers, little girls, I should say. I mean, I had one client who was 11 or 12, who was a friend's daughter. And she, even at that young age, had this like internal shame and like fear around being a girl and being a woman. And so those things really started to uncover for me that this is much deeper than just letting people understand their cycle and understand their hormones. This is about internalized wounding held in the body. And so that's what somatic starts to work with. So talk therapy is great for awareness. It's great for helping people understand parts of themselves. And talk therapy also keeps people who are highly intelligent really stuck, because when you're intellectualizing your trauma, which is what I used to do, I aced therapy. Seriously, I had like therapists who would sit there and tell me that I was basically like talking to a colleague, and like, yeah, that's a problem. So talking about the trauma sometimes can re-traumatize, but even if it doesn't re-traumatize you, it's keeping you in the head, it's keeping you in the thinking part. And so somatics has to do with the whole body. It has to do with the flesh, the soma. And 80% of the story comes from the sensation in the body. It's just that our language centers are what makes sense of what's happening. And so we think it's just our thoughts. But in reality, it's what's happening in the body first. And so I would see this manifest in cramps. I would see this manifest in missing periods. I'd see this manifest in infertility issues or miscarriages. And, me hypothesizing around, well, if this is something that is a trauma in the body, or it's a shame or a wound in the body, and it's in the menstrual cycle, it's presenting as a symptom from the menstrual cycle. It's got to be more. There has to be more to it than just getting people regulated, right? Just having people, bleed at the same time every month. And so that's really when I started to deep dive deeper into somatics themselves. But now, as I've sort of branched away from working with cycles, I certainly have a lot of that work in what I do. I even created a microdosing protocol that's based on the cycle. Now what I'm finding is I'm working with women who are in that middle-aged area, 35 to 55. And so sometimes they are bleeding still, but a lot of them have had hysterectomies or they've already reached menopause. And so these women have this, again, deep internalized shame around being a woman, decades of disconnection, decades of ignoring their feminine energy and their feminine intuition. And so somatics can help that as well. One more thing about somatics is the popular somatic practice out there is breathwork. That's what everybody's seeing on the internet. We've got folks like Wim Hof talking about it, right? And I love that. Breathwork is really powerful because it does help you tap into the body really instantly. And for those with a complex history of trauma, breath work or tapping into the breath can be really hard. And so what I usually have people do is, when I'm working with someone, I watch what their body is doing. I watch what happens when I ask them a question or when they're talking. And then through getting quiet and trying to notice sensations in the body, we'll complete movements that might feel like something that would complete the body's desire. So an example is when I work with people who have been raped or assaulted. A lot of times they're tucked in or they're down, right?
Yeah.
And a movement that can be really nice for them is a push out, right? An away, or even a push against something like a wall, right? So it's like they're pushing out, their body is able to fight back if they didn't fight back in that situation. And so that can help to clear out the stuckness of the body that's related to the thing that happened.
I mean, it makes complete sense. So as a personal anecdote, so both of my parents died in the last sort of 18 months. My dad about a month ago, and I went to sort of therapy because I've been to therapy before, and pretty much got to where you were, really. That sort of went to therapy, and I read lots of books, and I'm like, yeah, I'm a voracious reader and want to absorb and learn things, and sort of got to not necessarily end, but the sort of therapist was like, well, okay, and then I thought, okay, so I've got it all clear now in my head. But then I was lucky enough to talk to a somatic practitioner afterwards, and she just asked me a very simple thing. So, okay, what do you feel? Where do you feel it? What shape is it? Can you give it a name? What is it? Sensation? Is it hot? Is it cold? And I had a very black, angular mass in my gut, and it was very cold, and it was very, very different than talking about how I felt about my dad and my mum and stuff. It was almost divorced from that, but in a very good way. And it did feel that. So I think I got in my head that I was fearful to let grief into my body for fear of it being stuck there and it never going. I thought I can't fall into this. And it was, yeah, I agree. Yes, talking therapy, all that sort of stuff is great for lots of things, but I am glad we are not starting, it's obviously been going on for centuries, but we are hearing more about our body, and especially a thing that I've been looking at a lot lately is how our body has a memory,
Yes.
how our body has a memory from generations past, how our body keeps a score. So obviously the famous book. So our body has inherited trauma, and actually if we can break the trauma, then it's a massive thing. But we don't. When you go to a doctor, they never ever ask about any of that. They've got 5 minutes to see you and you move on, and that's it. So unless you've got the time and energy and effort, probably when you're feeling at a very low point, to actually go and explore and be fortunate to find somebody like you, it's really hard to let go and to explore those things.
Yeah. And I'm glad that you had that experience with that somatic practitioner. I mean, how potent to be able to experience and to notice in the body those things. But to your point about these generational and ancestral things, I think for me, that's when I've had several situations where I knew that, oh my gosh, this is like the body is connected to the trauma, and the body is connected to the habits that I keep falling prey to, even though I'm doing all of the affirmations and all of the journaling and all of the mindset work. And when I was speaking earlier about the fact that I had these anxieties from a very young age, even though I shouldn't logically, right?
Yeah.
What I've now uncovered is that when I was in my mother's womb, she was 12 years old. She found out she was pregnant about 6 months. She had PCOS. And so I was like fully fleshed out, swimming around in, the primordial womb space while she was getting kicked out of her home, while her mother didn't believe her about the things that had happened to her, while she was in such a massive state of stress and high cortisol that imprinted into my genetic coding. And then layer that into the fact that I was in a foster home for the first month of my life. No matter how loving that foster home would have been, and I don't have any conscious memory of that, there was still a taking away.
Yeah.
I was also a C-section baby. So it's like there are a lot of things that happened to that baby, to me as that baby, that were never conscious thoughts or memories. But like at 5 years old, why am I terrified of my dad dying? Why, like, to the point where I was having probably panic attacks to my own little 5-year-old body. Why am I so scared of being abandoned? Why do I have these wounds around being connected to people, this intimacy wound? At like 7 years old, I stopped letting people hug me. Like, what was that about? So when I started to uncover these things through somatics, through ingesting psychedelics, it was just like, holy shit, it all made sense. Like, my mind was like, okay. And that awareness came in. And then the somatics came in to help with moving through the things that I was then consciously aware of.
That's a really, really good explanation. And if you think about it, a lot of doctors, a lot of experts will say it's really good practice to play soothing music to your baby while it's in the womb, for the father or the mother to talk to the baby in the womb, to sort of talk about positive things. You think, well, okay, so if that's also good for the baby while it's in the womb, then surely if it's hearing violence or it's experiencing negativity or it's experiencing lots of things, sure, that's going to be bad for it. But we never hear about that.
Right.
We only hear about, if you want a genius baby, play it Mozart in the womb or read it Shakespeare or whatever. We never hear about, what about the baby that's, exactly like you said, is being kicked from pillar to post in metaphorical terms, and isn't in a comfortable place, and then it gets taken out from that place quite violently and then put into another place. And then, of course, the baby's memory, the baby's body is going to feel that and remember that and doesn't know what to do with it.
Yeah.
And some people, I guess, never get past that and never recognize that's the cause of their challenges. But thankfully you did. Well, one of the things that I've talked to quite a few people about is that whilst a lot of people don't understand their internal body and their feelings, etc., I think there's many people, maybe particularly women, that haven't taken the time to explore their physical entity, to explore their bodies, to lay there, sit there, whatever, for an hour, 2 hours, half a day or whatever, and just find out what they enjoy. That they enjoy their earlobes being touched. They hate their lips being touched. Their neck's so too sensitive, that whatever. And that's when I think, well, okay, well then it's really hard then to explore desire and intimacy with somebody else if you don't know your own body. Do you find that with some of the midlife women you talk to, that they're not actually, even though they might think they are, they're not totally in tune with what turns them on, what excites them, what distresses them, what they feel in their own bodies?
Oh, for sure. And I think for me, that's why some of the first things I have people do are work on igniting the senses. So I work really in the realm of sensuality, even more so than sexuality. And I like to separate those two. And I think it's important, especially because a lot of the women that I work with have had some type of a sexual trauma. And so, yes, absolutely. I think that I think everybody, but I think women in particular have this story that's played onto them by the media and maybe by religion and maybe by their own ancestral generational wounding, that it's not okay to enjoy things in life. And I'm not even talking about sex. I'm like, it's not okay to be super happy. It's not okay to be super jazzed about like this yummy cookie that I just got. Like, you have to be tampered down. Like, your enthusiasm and excitement is not okay. It's too much. And so the first practice that I give people that I work with is, a 5 senses practice. And it's not sexual. It certainly can lead into sexual things, and it can be really fun to do that with a partner. But it's find something that excites your sight, like something beautiful to look at, something that excites your hearing, your taste, your smell, something. And touch is such a wonderful one. And there's so many different ways to do that. You can do it right now, like touch something hard, touch something soft, and like, what's that feel like? Do you like that? Do you want more of that? Do you want something different? And so that's the first thing I have people really work on when they want to just start living the life that they crave. Because I really think that you cannot live a full life without pleasure. And yet we have such a hiccup around allowing pleasure into our life that, it's no wonder we're so disconnected from all of the things, because we feel we aren't worthy of it, or we can't, or we're too much if we do enjoy things.
Yeah, it's absolutely. Whenever we read or hear about, and it's the media's word for it, not mine, sort of pleasure seekers. It's always sort of in the next sentence is hedonism.
Yes, I was just gonna
There's
say
quite
it's
a big,
hedonistic.
quite a
Yeah.
big difference. Yeah, there's quite a leap, but like you say, there are so many small pleasures that I have a really strong sense of smell, which sometimes is great, sometimes it's not good. But I can, yeah, immediately remember situations or places or feelings or anything by smell, really.
Mm.
And yeah, it's incredibly powerful. But you can get an amazing. You're walking outside with the dog, and you're smelling just nature, smelling just being outside is just increased. Smelling the sea when you walk past the sea, it's amazing. And yeah, that is such a pleasurable experience. But I guess a lot of people, like you say, for religious, for societal reasons, we sort of don't allow ourselves to recognize how important it is to enjoy life as
To
opposed to
be in the
just
body. Yeah.
well just yeah, to be aware and to be aware of how the there's so many things that you read about that people just going out for a walk, if you're lucky enough to have a garden, just walk on the grass in your bare feet for it's an extraordinary feeling. And yeah, feeling what the body is as opposed to yeah, the body just being a collection of cells. It is a pretty amazing. It's a pretty amazing thing that we have that we can do with. So,
Yeah.
so when you're working with women in that particular age group, do you find that a lot of people are coming to you because they've been in a long term relationship and it may not be all they dreamed of? They just come out of a relationship and they're not sure what they dream of, and they're just trying to find what pleasure's all about. And how do you, beyond the exercise, how do you then help them to understand that it's okay to enjoy things. It's okay to seek pleasure and to not be selfish, but almost be selfless in a way. Because if you're experiencing pleasure, you want to share that with other people.
Yeah.
So I think it's not a selfish activity. I think it's a very selfless one because nobody's better to be around than a happy person, and they're spreading that. Misery loves company. They say, don't they?
Yeah.
They never say happiness loves company. So yeah. So how do you get them to feel after maybe many years of maybe being told or just feeling that they shouldn't
Yeah.
be looking at pleasure or to enjoy themselves?
The first part of the question, are the people that come to me people who've been in long-term relationships, or are
Hmm.
they single, or are they recently? That's not usually something that is a big focus of the work
Okay.
that I do. But now that I think about it, it's about half half.
Okay.
I have some in the last year. I've worked with a lot of women who are looking for love and seeking love. And then I also in the year before that, I had a lot of women who are married. But for me, how do you, like, to the second part of the question, how do you show them that it's okay, or that it's important? With tapping into senses and the sensual side of life, what I have found that to do is it helps women to slow down. And so I will say, the big commonality of almost everyone I work with is that they're experiencing some type of burnout, some type of overwhelm, some type of high overachieving nature that makes them feel like they can't slow down. And
Yeah.
so when they can finally understand slowing down is good, slowing down is okay, slowing down is safe, then they're much more open to these activities that I ask them to do. And they're much more likely to take that pause between something happening to them that they would normally react to, and having just a moment to pause before they respond. And so that's, I think, the big thing that I work with people on is they're coming to me and maybe they're wanting better love, better sex, better whatever. And we peel that back and realize, okay, well, I can't even be open to receiving, slowness. I don't even feel okay to not be doing everything every day, checking off the to-do list. And so
Yeah.
we really have to take it down to the very, very, very basics. And that's what somatics helps with. And that's what these body-based, mind-body connecting practices help with. It's how do we show us that we are safe to be slow? How
Hmm.
do we show our bodies that it's safe to feel? And how do we show our bodies ways to feel good? Because the thing is, safe to feel doesn't always mean you're going to feel good. And I think that that's a big
Okay.
misconception in somatic work. We're not always feeling good.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think that for women who've had trauma, that is really scary. It's, oh, well, I don't want to feel bad. I don't want to go into the body and suddenly uncover something that's shitty. And with the slowness and with that slowing down, and with the body finally understanding, okay, it's safe to just be in this moment right now, safe enough to go forward with these positive changes. I think that's really what I have seen help the most, and what I've seen then help women make positive changes in maybe the way that they're eating, or the way that they're
Mm.
relating, or the way that they're working. And so, yeah, I think hopefully that answered the question in sort of a
It does.
roundabout way.
No, it doesn't. And I think there's such a lot of pressure in our lives. Everything's got to be super fast. We answer our emails immediately. We dive into work meetings at any time of day or night. We do all these things. We're rushing from one event to another, dropping kids off or sorting out different things that we there's a guilt in not always doing something, and not always doing maybe at least one or two things at the same time. So when you're able to recognize and be convinced of the fact that actually being slow and being intentional
Mm-hmm.
and being mindful about what you're doing is so important. And I think some of that does link to our almost our first understanding of what sex is, and a lot of us carry it through our lives really, that sex is penetration and orgasm, and that's it. Typically orgasm for the man, and then whatever happens to the woman, hopefully the orgasm, but men are traditionally they're less caring about that than anything else. And when you think about intimacy, sensuality, sex as something other than penetration,
Yeah.
it changes the whole landscape really.
Mm-hmm.
Whether it can just be holding, looking at one another, not even touching one another, kissing, massaging, whatever, is as much sex as penetration is. Whereas we've always thought of that, if we're fortunate enough, that's the sort of, and almost the word foreplay, all this stuff comes before the main
Yeah.
event. This is just a starter. Then we've done that. Now let's go into the sex bit,
Mm-hmm.
which is just such a, I find that so annoying
Yeah.
that people don't recognize that just being in contact with somebody, talking to them, listen to them can be as erotic and sensual as actually having sex with somebody, as in the
Yeah.
physical penetration act. So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting too about what you had said is, our nervous system, our body has not evolved enough to cope with all the shit in this world. Like you
No.
said, emails constantly coming through, notifications on social media, the
Yeah.
dopamine addiction that we all have to phones, to Netflix, to whatever readily quick, everything's just coming at us so fast. And so when it comes to connecting, when it comes to the slow sensual practices, we're like, oh, there's something in our mind that's like, shouldn't we be doing something else? Like this,
Yes.
or this should be feeling better quicker. And that's a huge issue. It's something that I still struggle with. Because at this point I'm like, foreplay doesn't really exist. It's always around. And some teacher that I had said, you call it core play, not foreplay. But it's like when you have 17 million different things coming at you that are giving you the same hit that our ancestors were getting from sex and were getting from pleasure. It's no wonder our body is so out of whack, and we have this like block even subconsciously around slowing down enough to let ourselves feel good versus being in a goal oriented. How quick can I get this done so that I can answer the emails, that I can check my phones, that I can be available in this modern
Yeah.
world of craziness?
I think that's not to defend people at all, but I think that's part of the reason that people find affairs stimulating.
Oh,
Because I have an ex-colleague or an associate, and he had an affair, and he'd been very open about talking about it. He would come in so once a month, whatever. I was, last weekend was amazing, and we went away to this beautiful hotel in the sort of countryside, and we was just the two of us. And the sex was fabulous. We just spent all weekend thinking about ourselves, and then I got back home, and it was all the drudgery of the kids with this, and the dishes hadn't been done, the bins, and I sort of, even then I got to think, well, but listen to yourself. You're 1 week going away to a beautiful place with this person that you don't have to sort of spend time with really, apart from to have sex with them. And then the other thing, you're going home to sort out the bills and the bins and the finance, etc., and the kids being late for school and somebody can't find their school bag. Well, of course they're going to be different, and that's Yeah, so I do, and that's the thing, is on how do you create that space for yourself within a long-term relationship, so you can have that feeling, as well as, rather than having to go and have an affair that isn't the solution at all. And if you listen to yourself when you're talking about it, isn't the future at all. That's why so many people that I guess have affairs, that break up with their partners, go and live with the person they're having an affair with, break up again straight away again, because that, again, it's not what they bought into, really.
Right. No,
I'm not sure there's a question there. That's a long statement, sorry. But I did want to touch on psychobin and other psychedelics, and how you came to that, and yeah, what you've discovered in your exploration of that
Yeah.
space.
For sure. So psilocybin is magic
Psilocybin.
mushrooms. It's just
Okay.
easy to call them magic mushrooms.
Mhm.
So I first explored psychedelics in my 30s, a couple of recreational times. But then when I was in that year, 2022, I heard on a podcast a woman talking about microdosing mushrooms. And specifically for sexual trauma. And I'm like, okay. So I have her on my podcast. And then the second we hang up the call, I'm like, yes, I have to hire you. Because at this point, I had been in therapy. I had gone to sex therapy. I had been on medications. I had been doing, the sacred sexual practices. I had been reading about Tantra. I had been doing yoni massage and breast. I mean, I had done everything.
Fully invested, yeah.
And so I'm like, shit, what is blocking me? There's something there. And so when I started to work with Bijou, was my guide's name, the first thing I had to really grapple with was is this okay? Is this good? Right? Because I was very much a child of the post-Reagan era. I was a dare kid, and I thought drugs were bad. And so that's the first thing I had to get over and have to start looking at and start questioning, why are these illegal? And that's kind of a different conversation. But when I kind of got through that part, and at this point I'm still a news anchor, I'm still working, what I started to realize was that, I asked the intention I had was to become open to receiving pleasure. And what the mushrooms heard, because I believe they give you what you need, not necessarily what you want or what you ask for, they heard me say, I want to become open to receiving. And they're like, you can't receive pleasure if you can't receive anything. So we got to go for like the big one first before we let you have this more minute ask. And so in that year, as I leave my job, as I receive new offers, as I open myself to the possibilities of a life outside of TV news, as I work with microdosing to help me pause, to help me be more mindful, what I started to see were natural changes, not only in the way that I was acting, but in the way that I saw life and I saw myself. And I kind of describe it as, if you've seen the movie The Hunger Games, the kids in the arena, that's like me running around in normal life. And then when mushrooms came into my life, I zoomed out to be the game maker. And I could see why I was working, like why I was doing the things I was doing. I could see and then consciously manipulate my reality while connecting the dots to figure out, okay, this is why I'm acting this way. This is why I can't relax. This is why I have these anxious thoughts at night. The other thing that I found super impactful was dosing higher doses, right? So high enough to actually hallucinate, high enough to actually trip. Because microdosing, which is what I had been working with most often and what I worked with most often during my 2 years of doing this, you're not high, you're sober, you're completely able to do life. I would eat mushrooms and then hours later go and anchor the news. No problem. When I ingested higher doses so that I did hallucinate, things that happened were so profound and wild. Like I sat at the feet of the goddess. I saw myself in the womb of my mother. I understood at that point, this is why I have these anxieties, because I could feel that flush of her stress hormones. And it just took me into these places where I was finally able to like expand consciousness. I mean, that's what it's all about, enough to understand why my life was going the way it was going, why I was overusing alcohol, why I had these body image issues, why I was so addicted to, being successful. And so all of those things, over that year and a half time period that I was working with these medicines, wow, just like really blew the lid off of the work I'd been doing for 10 years, you know,
Yeah.
in and out of therapy. And so for me, that's what really helped. And then again, the connection with my womb was already something I'd been working on for 2 years at that point. And when I started to eat mushrooms, it was like I just felt so much more open, so much more connected, so much more like channel, like I could channel ideas and channel these ways of being, these protocols, these programs, these courses. It was just like I opened up my creative life force center thanks to these mushrooms that had been blocked for a really long time due to cultural and societal and religious programming. And so I think that mushrooms really help with that as well.
And so you said then about so the time when you were doing this. So does it mean it has is benefit to you had a sort of finite time? So like 18 months of doing it, and then you were happy to sort of move on, and you felt you'd experienced or been opened up as much as was desirable.
So that's the most amazing thing about psychedelic mushrooms.
Mm.
You're not working with them for the rest of your life. They're not like a pill, right? You're not
Mm-hmm.
taking it to symptom manage. You know, I really see them as coming into your life for a season. And so I worked with them for about 3 months, took time off. In that 3 months, I was taking little doses, and then I also had a bigger dose journey. I took, 6 or 7 months off, went in again with just microdosing, and I did that for about 10 weeks. In that 10-week period, I was also in my really intense training, which was longer than 10 weeks, but that specific 10-week period while I was also microdosing. That's when I got sober. I've been sober for 2.5 years. It finally clicked in that 10-week period. And that was in early 2023. I have not microdosed on a regular schedule. I've done it here and there, and I've done it for a week or so for specific things since then. And I'm still sober, and I'm still able to, you know, tap into the body. So yes, it comes into it opens the door into layers of healing that I think you're able to then manage. And then that's why the integration process is so important. And that can take weeks or months or years. And then if something else comes up for you, maybe you go back with mushrooms and you partner with them again for a while. But for me, having been on antidepressants, having been on anxiety medications for a really long time, it was just so shocking that I could eat mushrooms for a couple of weeks and through a lot of other additional help and guidance, not need them again, versus like how I would have to rely on Xanax if I was anxious or was having a panic attack. So yeah, it's definitely something that I wouldn't say has like a, what's the word? It doesn't have like a necessarily like a deadline, or it doesn't have like an expiration date, right? I think that the profound healing, if you really integrate, can last your whole life. And I've certainly heard of people having 1 or 2 big doses, never eating mushrooms again, and totally changing their life.
How important is the guidance? You talked about Bijou being your guide. How important is the guidance and the help to almost interpret what you've experienced? Does that make sense?
Yeah. So as a guide, I'm never trying to interpret things for people, but what I do is help them go deeper. So I kind of explain it like DIY projects versus like hiring a contractor. Will you get to the same outcome? Possibly. But you know, if you have already gotten to a place where you've been in therapy, you've read the books, you've done all the things that's like popular in society, and then you're going to explore medicine work for possibly the first time, at least this was my case, I was very cool with DIYing my spiritual journey until it got to medicine, till it got to mushrooms. I was like, I am not going to tiptoe into this world on my own. I want someone there to be able to answer questions. I want someone there to, you know, metaphorically hold my hand. And I really think that when we're working in the shadow, when we're working with our unconscious and our subconscious, we have to have another person there or people there, because you can't see into your own shadow all the time. You almost have to have someone there to mirror that back and reflect back to you what it is that you're experiencing. And and validate what it is you're experiencing. Because if I had eaten mushrooms and sat and like saw my dog come to me as a human child, and I would have possibly just thought, oh, well, that's like cool. But no, what I realized is in that specific journey, I was grappling with the fact that I was not going to be a mother in this life. And that dog, who was my soulmate dog, who passed away last year, was there to guide me and help me understand that I can move from this maiden archetype into mother, into whatever next archetype comes for me, wild woman. And I don't have to have a physical child to like be societal standards, like moving upward in the way that women are supposed to be. And if I had not had Bijou to like walk it past her, I probably would have just been like, oh, that's cool. But through that reflection and through our chats, we really did piece together like, oh, I think this is what this is about. And it's not for her to say yes or no, just like it's not for me to say yes or no to anybody who I'm working with. We're kind of just here to ask the questions like, is that what you think? You know, I guess that's sort of what it's like. But certainly if you've had trauma, if you are aware of things that have happened in your past, I highly recommend working with a guide when you even eat tiny doses, because it's very, very safe. Even at larger doses, it's very safe when you have the proper prep and the proper integration afterwards. But it'll just be even easier and smoother for you if you've got someone there at least to answer some questions for you. Yeah.
Do you, I was going to say hope, but I won't say hope. Do you think that in, I don't know, 25 years' time, will still just be standard that everybody, when they get to 25, will just go and see the guidance of what they'll do, and it'll explore the rest of their life?
So do I think that in 25 years we'll be in a place where people...
This will just be commonplace, and this will be part of them.
You know, I was so hopeful that we would get there in like 5 years.
Yeah.
Last year, I really was. And then here in the States, we had some things go down. There was an MDMA... they're trying to get MDMA passed as a therapeutic, and they really they messed up the study, and so it didn't get approved by the, I think, FDA or DEA. I can't remember which one of the ones, but that I think was a big blow. Yeah. In Texas, where I live, we are studying psychedelics specifically for the veteran population.
Yes,
and,
I read about that. Yeah.
And that's great. That's great. And women have a higher case of PTSD than veterans.
Yeah.
They do. It's just not talked about. And so I really was so hopeful that I was saying a year and a half ago, we would see this go down in 3 years. Now I'm like, oh, I don't know. I think that eventually, well, I have my like positive way, my positive and then my cynical way. I think that if Big Pharma can figure out a way to commodify,
commercialize, yes.
Seriously, if they can synthesize this in a way that they can profit off of, then absolutely we will have this happen. And that's kind of fucked up.
Yeah.
And there's a part of me that's like, okay, well, even the synthesized version of mushrooms, which is called psilocin, is proven to be beneficial, but I really just don't understand how you can say that something that grows outside my house, you in the UK, you got them up there, how that can be illegal. Like, give me a break. So I am hopeful that we will have a reckoning around plant medicines and fungi medicines, and that there will be enough people to help folks navigate that helpfully and holistically. And I don't know when that's going to happen. I mean, here in the US, things are cray at the moment. So maybe we'll see it, maybe we won't. But I do think that at least, you know, we spoke about this earlier, the Joe Rogans of the world, the Theo Vaughns of the world, these high level podcasters speaking about this. Yes, they're coming at it from a very biohacking bro speed element. Like, I think that that's helping put it into most people's awareness. And I don't think that here in Texas, we would be seeing what we're seeing right now if it wasn't for, his name just literally escaped me. I just said it. Not Theo Vaughn. What's the other guy? Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan is like an hour from where I live. And it's the capital of Texas where we're seeing this big change. So I think that that's helpful in a lot of ways and also hurtful in a lot of ways. And so for me, here's what I realized. It was worth the risk to do something that the world and the government said was not legal, so that I could change my personal life. It was worth it. And I really wholeheartedly believe that when you start to eat mushrooms, you start to become ungovernable because you realize that this is not illegal because they're worried about you and your safety. They're worried about you asking big questions and understanding we're all from a place of love and unity, and we're all connected. And so when you look back at when these became criminalized, and you follow back the track, which is, again, my journalistic background, my research background, it's like, oh, okay, well, they didn't want you to ask questions about the wars. They didn't want you to ask questions of the government. They didn't want you to ask questions about the Cold War. And that's why it's illegal, not because it's harmful. I mean, alcohol is terrible. Alcohol is horrific. It's hurting you. It's hurting other people. Mushrooms are like nothing compared to that. And yet they're Schedule 1, and alcohol is everywhere here in the States. It's messed up.
Oh, and in the UK. So it's funny, my wife's from Australia. In Australia, they have specific alcohol stores, so you don't stock it in a supermarket. They have a separate store, whatever. So when she first came in, went to a supermarket, she's like, "Well, what is this?" It was just alcohol was lining the aisles and all the promotional bins and everything. She's like, "Well, what? You didn't have? You could still buy it quite easily, but you had to go to a different shop to go and buy it." And the research shows every drink you have kills brain cells. Literally, is what it does. Yeah. But obviously, the tax and the revenue and stuff that governments can get from that, and I guess that's where the sort of marijuana industry is going, is that it's becoming a very commercial, multi-billion-dollar industry that has attracted a lot of big corporate investment. But if it's getting out there, people are taking gummies and taking things that are sort of helping them. So hopefully we'll see this sort of go forward. So did taking the mushrooms and going through the microdosing and the larger dose, did that help you feel more comfortable following on from the trauma with your own sensuality and intimacy with, I guess, both yourself and other people?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
And so, like I said, that intention, the first with my coach, was to be open to receiving pleasure. About 18 months to a 2-year period after that, I'm taking a walk in my neighborhood and realize, oh, I'm way more orgasmic than I've ever been before. I'm experiencing life in new ways. And that, for me, and maybe this isn't like the most popular thing to say, but orgasms are great. And living life from a place of pleasure where everything gives you pleasure is, like, for me, what it's all about. And so mushrooms for me helped me come back into the body, get out of the loop that was always circulating in my head around doing and proving and achieving and hustling, so that I could soften, so that I could understand how to just slow down and be okay slowing down. And I think that's truly what allowed me to then parlay that into sex, parlay that into my relationship, because I was okay with saying, all right, hey, I don't want to just jump to penetration. I want to breathe with you for a little bit. I want you to put your hand on my chest right here. I want to give you a massage. I want you to give me a massage. And so I was able to slow down enough to, like you said before, figure out what I liked and what I didn't like. Yeah. And this is something that really came up for me, realize in a moment what I was like. I would have these things when I first started working with mushrooms and then also having sex, where there would be like a inner narrator in my head. And so it would almost be talking to me like, is this okay? Do we like this? Like, it was kind of strange. And I think that was more because I was becoming aware. Yeah. And because I hadn't at that point done the integration and the somatic integration. So, and I'm actually just like uncovering this as we're freaking talking about this. I had this like inner dialogue in my head where I'd be having sex, and it wasn't like I was disassociating, but I was like talking myself through, do we like this? Do we want to slow down? And that was probably present beforehand, but it wasn't as loud. And so with mushrooms, as I become aware of this little inner voice, I would say, okay, all right, hey, we gotta pause here. Like, we gotta stop. I would like have my husband be like, okay, we gotta just take a moment. We need to breathe through this. Like, I'm kind of thinking, I'm in my head too much, like something's happening. Yeah. And I think beforehand, when that would happen, I just keep powering through, because who am I to say stop? Like, this is my marriage, Yeah. So that certainly helped. The other thing that I realized happened, thanks to orgasms, is I started to rewire my life for pleasure. And that's what's so interesting about psilocybin is it does rewire your brain. It softens parts of your brain that are responsible for your habits and your default mode. And if your default mode is fast, hustle, overachieving, then that's like what you're naturally going to do. But because of just the little daily acts, like sitting outside, listening to birds, going for a walk, eating some like food and actually enjoying it versus how I'd been programmed for so long to just starve myself, those things started to program my whole life to be wired more toward slowness and wired more towards pleasure. And then that came into the bedroom as well. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. But your husband's overjoyed. Gosh.
I'm sure, man, that man has been through it all. There has been certainly, and I sit here and I'm like, I say all that and still I'm sure our sex life isn't what he would want it to be. And for me, it's better than it was before. And that's important because I think the other thing that I realized thanks to mushrooms is when I was drunk, which I was drunk for the majority of my 20s and for like the first couple years in my 30s, I had a lot of sex. And that sex, maybe I came, maybe I didn't come. I can't remember. I was drunk. But like that sex was different. Yeah. And yet, because of what we talked about with your friend with the affair, that sex had the additional hit of the dopamine from alcohol.
Yeah.
And so I had to rewire my body's responses to sex, but also my body's beliefs around it. And so that it's actually okay if you're not having sex as much as you used to have because you're also not drunk and you're also not like losing these inhibitions. That's okay. And we can come out now with a healthier relationship to body, relationship to pleasure, relationship to sex. And if it looks different, then that's okay.
Mm. It's funny you say that. So I stopped drinking. Gosh, how was I on there? About 14 years ago, and I haven't had a drink since then. And I used to get blackout drunk. So I somehow get home and be in bed on my own or with somebody else and think, oh, okay, I'm sure that was amazing, but I didn't really know. Yeah. And then when you start having sort of regular, which is not to say frequent, but regular sex when you're sober, it is very different.
Yeah.
Because you've got to be more aware and it's more, you're sort of thinking more and maybe in your own head more. Mm-hmm. And that would have been a good time for me to sort of take mushrooms, I think. So you start coming off this, I have no idea what the hell's happening. It just, something's happening and I'm drinking and it's not great for me. And it's all part of the bigger mess really. But then when you sort of stop that, it's like, oh gosh, okay. And you're not sure where to go. But I do think, being guided through that time would have been really useful because you're very proud of yourself for stop drinking, which is great. You've done a good thing there. But then that's where you're left with really, well, I've stopped drinking. Mm-hmm. okay, but now I want to start something different now, which is kind of weird. I've taken a lot of your time, but I did want to just ask you a couple more things about something else if you've got the time. Is that okay?
Sure, of course.
Great. So you also did a lot of work at the beginning on menstrual cycle and with taking hormones to sort of not have a child, whatever. Obviously, as women get older, they go through the menopause, and there's a big debate in the UK, and I'm not sure about the US, but in the UK about hormone replacement therapy or not. So I find it personal. I've had a sort of experience of people on both sides. So I was out with a friend for lunch the other day, and she didn't take any sort of HRT, and she said, "Gosh, so I've been going through it now for sort of 7 years, and I feel I'm sort of coming out the other side of menopause." And then I've been with somebody that's sort of on HRT, and they had a period 12 days ago. They've got another one today, then they feel confused and not uncertain. They've got these patches and tablets and everything else. And it seems to be it's either in the UK anyway. It's don't take it or do take it, and you have a 5-minute consult with a doctor. They say, "Do you want to go on HRT? Yes or no?" And here's the HRT, not which type would suit you. And I think there must be I'm not sure what the right word is, almost a third way, because menopause is obviously a very natural state, but it either seems to be heavily medicated with hormones, which do lots of things to our bodies, women's bodies, or not. And I just wondered if you'd had any experience of that and what your thoughts were.
Oh, I have so many thoughts. So
That's
I'll first say I'm not a doctor or medical professional.
Yep.
And I think that birth control has a point, right? Like I'm not anti-birth
Yeah.
control. I think that is important. And I'm not anti-HRT. I think that if you decide that's what you want, great. What I want to talk to instead is this idea of menopause and how it's looked at in the Western world, UK, US. There are places in the world where people do not have menopausal symptoms, where women do not suffer from perimenopause. You look at places in Japan, you look at places, there's another place, like the Middle Eastern worlds. I don't think
Yeah.
that those are ones, but for sure I remember Japan when I was reading and learning about this, where people in the second to third half of life, the third or second act of life, have purpose, have passion, and are seen as actual members of society. Menopausal symptoms are almost non-existent. And so what is it in Japan? Is it called ikigai, where there's like this purpose and there's like, yeah. So you can look at that and realize, okay, it's not a woman thing. It's not like just a thing women are destined to go through. It's a societal thing. It's a cultural thing. It's environmental. It's what we're eating. It's how much we're moving. And it's what we think about ourselves. So the other thing about a lot of these places where menopause isn't as prevalent, these symptoms aren't as bad, they also don't have quite as much doctrine around religion.
Yeah.
And so for me, as I'm thinking about when I am 39, as I move forward into my perimenopausal years, and even having doctors in the last 6 months tell me, well, you could probably boost your testosterone if you wanted to like go on some hormone replacement therapy because you've got low energy. For me, it's like the third way is to figure out, maybe through mushrooms, through somatics, through some type of inner work, what the symptoms are trying to show you. And that's hard for me to really express or explain because I don't know what people might be going through. But what is the body trying to show you through the symptom? What is the symptom's inner dialogue? What's it want to say to you? Is this hot flash because of the fact that I have repressed anger that I haven't expressed? And so I think for me, that's the third way. It's letting the body lead you to the story that could potentially be helping the symptom become expressed. And then it's diet and exercise. It's different things, putting like a different look at what you're putting into your body. Because when I was working with people specifically on cycles, we would change the diet, we would change the mindset around the cycle, and problems would go away. And so I think that has to also be true for people in menopause. Like you've said before, damn, we're real quick to throw some medicine on something. The doctors will see us for like 2 seconds. The reason I had to do so much research and actually became a menstrual cycle coach is because in the pandemic, I could not get in to see my doctor. When I came off of the pill, she just said, start tracking your cycle. I'm like, I don't know what the hell that means. So I had to do all this work on my own. And so, when I talk to people, and really I think part of my big mission as well is I want people to understand that they have the right to their sovereign choice. And if your sovereign choice is, I want to take HRT because this shit is impossible. I have such bad vaginal dryness that I just, oh my God, like I can't imagine. Yes, that's your choice. You should do that. If you want to eat mushrooms to solve your mental health problems and your sexual trauma, yes, you should do that. If you want to go on antidepressants, you should do that. And you should have all the answers. You should have all of the information. And that's the problem with the medical world. They're not giving you the 411 when it comes to some of these things because they're not there with you long enough. And truth be told, doctors aren't always as knowledgeable as we give them credit for. The medical system's been around for what, 200 years, if even, and it was highly problematic the way that it started. Plant medicines have been around for millennia, and our body is wise. Our body has the answers. We just need to have the trust to be able to be like, okay, I'm going to go with that, and that sovereignty.
I totally hear what you're saying, and I think we, which almost makes it feel so odd that not we, governments, corporations have a very vested interest in downplaying or criticizing or negating plant medicines which have been around for as long as these records exist. So these things have been around for thousands of years, not hundreds of years. I mean, in the UK, if you get your haircut, men's barbers, it's like a red and white stripe pole. And it's very much like pearl, because the red was the barbers were also bloodletters. Like 200 years ago, the barbers would let blood as well, and give leeches, and that was part of the treatment. This is 200 years ago. It's not that long ago. So like, we're talking great grandparents all the time. And yeah, but because they can't commercialize it, then they make a distrust of it. And I know there's a huge amount of critique and negativity from some people about Bobby Kennedy and his approach. But one of the things that he has said is, we want, maybe it means it or not, but ideally we want people to have all the information to make the choice. Mm-hmm. And so often I get my antidepressants each month, and I sort of open the packet as a piece of paper and I just throw it away. But if I open it up, it literally is almost like it's this size of possible side effects, symptoms. And if you read it, you'd never ever take them. If you really believe what it says, could cause from mild headache to death. Okay, they pretty much cover themselves. But because because as you've said before, it's very ironic that governments are in charge of education, whereas actually it's in the government's interest to keep people pretty uneducated, so they don't ask those questions. It's kind of weird, isn't it, when you actually think about it? And this is not a big conspiracy thing. It's just think. So they're helping supposedly ask questions. And when you go to university, my daughter's going, I think it's something like 12 hours of teaching a week, and the rest of it is nothing else. You pay tens of thousands of dollars for it, but it's not. They never get taught how to ask questions. It's more, we'll tell you the answers to the questions that we're going to pose to you. Mm-hmm. And if that's how you start off when you're 5 and you're taught that 1 + 1 = 2, it carries on until you're 18. You're taught that, this battle happened, that's what the results were, and this is, and through your whole life, then you think, well, I'm just looking for the answers. But I've always loved a particular quote, and I have no idea who said it, and you can paraphrase this wherever you want, but the quote is, technology is the answer. Now, what's the question? And the same with anything. It's like, medicine's the answer. What's the question? Mm-hmm. It's like the doctor's almost in his hand. He's got them. Well, this is the answer. What's wrong with you? Yeah. And it's always this fix-all, which is, just kind of weird.
Well, and I think what's interesting too about what you said, the government has this, this, I guess, mission or the government benefits also, not only when they put down plant medicines that they can't commodify, or they can't get their buddy to like pay for their lobby, campaign because they didn't, whatever. For me, what I started to look at and really realize is the government benefits when you're disconnected from your body. And so with women specifically, and how much we've seen diet culture be prevalent for probably in the States, when you look at it back, diet culture really became huge during slavery. There's actually church bulletins talking about being thin is godly, being fat is not. And it was because of the different bodies, natural bodies of Black women versus white women. So anyway, that's a whole separate thing. But when you look at how women have been told to starve themselves, and how social media keeps us disconnected from the outside world by helping us focus on one certain thing. And yes, social media also allows us to see things happening all over the world. I really just, I see the government as benefiting from us being disconnected from ourselves. And so back to what we've talked about, back to my own history, right? What was I focused on for so many years of my life? My body, how big my body was, how little my body was, what I was putting into my body, how much work I was doing with my body. And so I had my head kind of in the sand like a little ostrich. I was really focused only on me, individual me. And so I think what mushrooms do, and what somatics do when we come back into the body and we start to heal those elements, we can broaden our scope so that then we can focus on our community. We can focus on other people. It's not so much individual. It becomes more community based. And I think if we want the world to change and we want the paradigms to shift, mushrooms are really a lovely catalyst for that, because they help you heal. And then you then can heal the community. You then can voice your, actions into the world, your truth into the world, and help the collective as well. And the government, they don't like that shit. And so it's up to people like us and the folks who are listening to this to just be questioning of that. Like, I was asking questions in full sentence by the time I was 1 year old. That's according to my mother. No wonder I do the work I do.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, just two more things. One is, so yeah, would you rather take Ozempic or mushrooms, really? But I know in a few years' time we'll find out that Ozempic has all the other ones have so many side effects, which you're
Oh
already
my
seeing.
gosh.
I'm going to say. But my last question is, you sort of answered this throughout the whole discussion, really. But you obviously get to speak with people that are going through some or have had some form of trauma. You help them explore it. You could put yourself in a place where you're carrying a heavy weight, because trauma weighs heavy on a lot of people. So how do you talked about your meditation practice and a few other things, but how do you, I guess, nourish your own mental and physical wellness so you can show up for yourself, for your partner, for your clients, for your friends, colleagues? How do you look after yourself?
Well, I use protection. So I use, I wouldn't necessarily call it a spell, but I do
Mhm.
identify as a witch. So I put up a protection before I meet with a client, and then I do a cleansing afterwards. That's certainly been helpful, to keep their stuff with them and my stuff with me, so that we're not bleeding onto each other. And that happens in any relationship, right? Even with the best protection. So that's one thing. The other thing is that I have really utilized somatic practices. I developed something I call the shift method, which
Mhm.
is a 9-minute somatic practice that I use pretty much every day, at least before or after a client. And it's 2 minutes of journaling, 3 minutes of breath work, which is simple breath in the nose, out the mouth with sound. And then
Mhm.
4 minutes of movement. So usually that's like shaking, or even like like pretending like your body's wet and you're like getting the water off. Dancing, stretching. And so that somatic movement, along with the journaling, because the journaling is important, because in the journaling part, you're just kind of brain dumping, what are the sensations in my body? What's coming up for me right now? What are the feelings, the thoughts, the stories? That has been really helpful to keep my body moving forward without the secondary trauma imprinting on me, because that was what I didn't have access to in TV, right? Like, the reason I
Yeah.
got diagnosed with PTSD was because of all the secondary trauma, all of the
Yeah.
things I was seeing, the people I was speaking to, the stress that was coming up, not only from my job, which was such a stressful daily deadline pressure,
Yeah.
it was like a thing every day, but the stories, the people, the images, like things blurred on TV had to be blurred by somebody, and I was sometimes that person. So I didn't have those tools in television to, one, protect myself, but also to move the body in a way that feelings of sadness, feelings of anger, feelings of grief could come up and then out. And so that's really been the most helpful for me.
There's some really cool videos on Instagram of you dancing. I love it.
Thanks.
No, it's funny. So many people I've talked to say that there's so much value in what they described as ecstatic dance and
Mm-hmm.
just letting go and just yeah. And I'm not a dancer, but like, it doesn't matter. Actually, it's funny. I was walking through the local woods and fields with Gina, my dog, earlier on. I had my earbuds in, and if anybody's seen me sort of jigging along and dancing along to the music, they would have thought I was crazy. But it felt lovely. It felt
Yeah.
really lovely, and I hadn't done that. I don't know. It just felt. I don't know. It just felt like I had to do it.
Yeah.
It was cool.
And I'll say this too, because when I first started learning about somatics in 2018, 2019, dance was what I thought it was. And I
Okay.
was really resistant to it. And
Yeah. Yeah.
so I'm like 6 years in at this point. And yes, now I like twerk or dance or whatever. But just standing up and stomping your feet, letting your shoulders shake as you let your
Mhm.
hands drop to the side,
Yeah.
moving the body in like cat cow, which is a yoga pose. That's
Mm.
somatic too. And if you're someone who's listening to this and you're like, I'm not going to be caught dead dancing, or that feels like weird to me, then that's also, these other somatic practices are just as potent and probably more so in a lot of ways than dancing. So I love that you pointed that out, because, God, the rhetoric around ecstatic dance as a somatic practice was so thick. I think now we're seeing people like actually
Yeah.
break
Yeah.
it down. But like in
Mhm.
2018, 2019, I would join these like online, and even in 2020 when everything was online, these like somatic exercises, and it was all dancing. I was like, what in the fuck? I don't want to do this. This doesn't feel like
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
thing. So yeah, so that's actually really interesting to point out too. You don't have to dance to move your body somatically. And honestly, if you ask your body what it is it wants, and you like, that's why the breath work comes first. If you ask the body, if you're aware of what's coming up for you in the movement section of the shift method, your body will move how it wants to. It will do naturally
Yes,
things that you need it to
exactly that.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's fascinating if you just can pause long enough to like let it speak through sensation and movement.
Yeah, if you don't think, oh god, this is gonna look silly, and I'm too old and serious for doing this. But yeah, just I think Gina thought I got mad, but it was just jogging along and then tapping away and stuff. But one final, this is not a question, but so I'm a sucker for this film. There's a film called The Proposal with Sandra Bullock,
Okay.
and she does a scene where she dances, and it's fabulous. She's twerking away and she's getting into it, and it's absolutely. Whenever I see that, then I want to. Nobody needs to see this. I want to sort of twerk and get into it, but it's
But
just fabulous.
I just desperately like see myself as Betty White.
Yeah.
Like in 30,
Just like
50
starting off
years.
like quite starting off with a smoke and then looking a bit confused as she was getting more and more into it.
Witch in the woods, girl. Like that's gonna be me. I just will
I love
be
that. Yeah.
out there leading people through twerking to the window, to the wall.
To the window. Oh. Yes, I love that. I'm gonna go watch that clip now after this. Thank you so much. I love that. I'm gonna put lots of links into the notes. People really explore and listen to what you just heard, because I love the conversation. You were I said I was excited about this, and I don't say that often, but you're great. You're really. I wish I'd found things at the age you found them. But hey, it's never too late to find things, is it? So, and I've got a good few years ahead of me to explore this stuff. But people like you really make it come to life. So yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.